Hey guys, today we're going to be checking out a new printer from Creality, which is the ever so popular Ender-3 version 2, but now it's in this Neo iteration. So Creality's been really pumping out new little updates to their existing line. And so for this printer, the Neo version kind of brings all of the little upgrades that you would want. So in this video, we're going to unbox it, set it up, and do some prints. Hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Alright guys, so I'm pretty excited to check out the Ender-3 version 2 Neo, and I've been a huge Creality fan for a while now, ever since their first Ender-3 printer. So this is the box it comes in. We got a picture here of what the printer looks like, the dimensions of the box, and the shipping label says 8 kilograms, which is about 16-17 pounds. Let's go ahead and open it up. So on the top we can see that it's all packed in this dark soft foam. We got our documentation, the quick start guide, and some warranty cards, things like that. So everything is packed very well, and I'm just gonna go ahead and pull things out one by one. So the first thing that sticks out here is the screen, and this is the same kind of screen that the Ender-3 version 2 has. So it's not a touch screen, it's a rotary kind of operation in the click. We have this bracket that unclicks, and that's how you can take the screen on and off. And it plugs here in the back. I would like to see smaller bezels for the future, but I think at this point they're just using the design they have and they're upgrading it slowly. So here we have a bag of accessories and lots of different things, and we'll go through this in a little bit. We got our power cable, US type. A little spatula, it's not sharpened, so these are kind of quite useful to stick between the nozzle and the bed to, you know, maybe get a booger out or something. All right, so we got one layer here that comes out. Well, actually we do have a spool holder still in there, and yeah, they're just using the old typical spool holder that goes on top. And honestly, I wish they would include the side spool for this one, but the V2 Neo here still comes with this top mounted pretty simple spool holder. All right, so yeah, that's the first little layer there. So you probably guys can't see too well, but yeah, everything's nestled very nicely. And we got the gantry here, which is the upper portion, and then the base underneath. And this is a pretty simple printer to put together, as we only have a few parts to connect. So I'll go ahead and pull out the gantry, and sure enough, it is tethered to the base, so we'll have to pull them out together. But it does all come out quite easily, so I'm gonna move them out of the way for a second. And you guys can see that's everything for the box. Very well packed and lots of good protection on all corners. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and flip this thing around. So on the back here we have the power supply. It's all nicely shielded. On this side we have a cover where our main board is, and we'll pop these little bolts off and see what's inside. And on this side we have a storage bin, which is really nice. So let's go ahead and see what's in this bag. So we do get some pretty nice snippers, and on the side of this box we have a clean out needle that's taped to it. We get some zip ties, a knob, and this is for the extruder, and you guys can see it has a brass insert there, and this is used for indication of flow, and also you can turn it manually, pushing the filament in and out of the extruder. We also get a coil of filament. It looks like PLA, and I'm not too crazy about these because they're all tangled up, but you know, something to get you started with. 4 large bolts, which are used to connect the gantry to the base, and these are M5 45s. We get some spare parts, looks like a 0.4 nozzle, a coupler piece, and also a little clip to hold the PTF tubing in. You also get a USB adapter to micro SD card, and the little SD card's in it. And for the last baggie, we have some tools that comprises of some Allen wrenches, a couple open-end wrenches, and a flat screwdriver. So let's go ahead and grab our Allen wrenches, and yeah, really nice how they have them organized like this, not just scattered all over the place. So this is a nice little touch. And we'll go ahead and undo these 3 under here, and there's one on the other side for this cover, and now it should just pop off. Sure enough, it does, and we do have a fan connected to it. with our board and everything else underneath. All right, so let's take a closer look. So you guys can see we have a Creality version 4.2.2, which is their main board that they use for the Ender. We got stepper drivers that are integrated into the board, and they do have little heat sinks. And also we do have a 32-bit ARM processor. And you guys can see all the wires are managed and routed out through this cutout here, and there's protective shield for the wires. So yeah, pretty typical here for Creality, and everything looks really good. All right, so I'm gonna put this lid back on, and we'll flip it around and start the assembly. And if you guys notice here on each corner of the printer, we got these really large rubber feet, which will help with noise and vibration. All right, so we got it flipped back around. First thing that stands out is this build plate, and it's a flexible sheet. So it's like a thin metal sheet that flexes, and I really like these. And this coating here, I think it's called PE, and I prefer this kind of build plate over the normal mats or even the glass beds. I feel like these are much easier and better overall, and there is a magnetic that this magnetizes to, so I'm gonna leave this off for now. And yeah guys, as you can see, pretty much the printer is all assembled. All we got to do is connect this gantry here to the base, and we're gonna have these 4 bolts that go through the bottom into the channel. Let's go ahead and get those out. And they do give you an extra one. So I guess we can go ahead and see what's in this manual. So we get a little thank you from Creality, our warranty card, and then the quick start guide, which is a really nice one. We have all the parts that are included with this printer, and the installation is only a couple pages and very simple. So just connecting the gantry, then the spool holder, and then connecting the wiring. And by the way, here's all our parameters to the printer. So yeah, this should be very simple guys. And if you're just getting started with 3D printing, this is going to be great for you because it's quite simple compared to what it used to be like. Let's go ahead and start putting this thing together. So yeah, simple as grabbing the gantry, we're just going to set it over these sides here, and you guys can kind of see it's machined out there, and it's literally going to sit right in that spot. Now when you put this down, make sure that your cables here are not tangled and they're happy, so you might have to twist this around to untangle it. So yeah, I think mine's good right there. But yeah, simple as that. We're going to grab the bolt we need. There's no really easy way of doing this, but we can kind of lift one corner and then put the bolt through there. Yeah, well, however you got to do this, you can, you know, put it on its side or maybe off the edge of the table or whatever's easier for you. Just get these bolts in there, and we're going to use the largest Allen wrench to run them down. Now we're not going to tighten this. I'm just going to get him close, and we're going to do the other side exactly the same way. Run them down, but we're not going to tighten these either, and the reason for that, it's quite simple. If we go to the back, you guys can see we have one elite screw here, which connects to our x-axis, and we're going to want to bring that all the way down. And the reason for that is because we want the space between these rollers here to be as close as possible on the bottom. Since we are spending most of our time down there, we want to get that part as close as possible, so just go down as much as it goes. So now we're going to go back underneath and completely tighten these up on both sides. All right, and that's pretty much it. So another thing you might want to check is if your printer is sitting level on each corner to see if it's moving around. So as you guys can see, mine is nice and solid. If you guys can see on the side, there's 4 bolts. If yours is wobbling a bit, go ahead and loosen them on each side and then let it sit flat and then tighten them back up. So I'm going to go ahead and just check mine, make sure they're tight. They're a little loose, but not too bad, which is a good idea to go back and kind of check them anyways, as they do loosen up after they get assembled. And also underneath the printer, we got 4 bolts here. You can go ahead and check those, kind of snug them up. All right, and that feels nice and solid right there. So let's go ahead and do the screen next. And we can see here there's a wire that comes out from the bottom, and that's gonna plug into our main screen. But before we do that, let's go ahead and take the bracket off that it connects to. And we're gonna be installing the bracket right here on the channel. And there's some T-nuts that are pre-installed. We're gonna grab the correct wrench and we're gonna loosen them all because they're all tight. So there's a bolt on one end and a T-nut on the other. So now that they're all loose, what we're gonna do is we're gonna line these T-nuts up to the channel. So these 2 here are gonna go on the bottom channel and this one here on the top. Yeah, just get them to kind of jump in there. And then, you know, you can install this screen more forward or more back, whatever you want. I guess I'm gonna try to flush it here with this fascia. So about right there. And so with these, you just wanna unscrew the bolt and then screw it in, and the T-nut should turn into the channel and lock in. It's a little hard to show you guys, but it's not very complicated. If you're having trouble, just unscrew the bolt and then screw it back in. And try to make sure that the T-nut's lining up center on the groove there in the channel. Yeah, I'm just gonna unscrew it and then screw it in. And it grabbed. And we got one more here, a little bit harder to get to. And just like that, our bracket for the screen is on. So since we're over here, let's go ahead and plug it in on the back, just like that. and then we'll click it in. And now we have our screen installed. For the next part, we need to install the spool holder, and that goes on top. And if you guys look where our extruder is, that's where the filament goes in. So it has to come from the spool holder down into here. So the spool holder mounts closer to the lead screw here. And we're also working with T-nuts. So let's loosen the bolts. So spool holder going to the back. And I like to go as far as possible to the edge. But yeah, same thing here. We're just gonna unscrew it, then screw them in. And the T-nut should turn and lock in. And same thing for this one. And there we go, our spool holder is installed. So the last thing left to do really is just to plug in our wires. So we have two larger plugs, which is an X motor and an E for the extruder, and they are labeled with these little yellow tags. And then our smaller plug is our X axis end stop switch, which is over here. But let's go ahead and install the motor plugs. So the E will go on the extruder right here, and the X plugs underneath the motor, just like that. And then our X axis end stop switch plugs in under here, which is a little harder to see, but yeah, right under there. And that's pretty much done. And the last thing we got to plug in is our Z-axis motor, and this wire just comes out here from the bottom, and we'll go ahead and plug it in just like that. So yeah, pretty simple. Now the only thing that we can see that there's a little issue here is that this wire here just kind of falls down, and that's not good. So we need to fasten it right here. So there's a little slot on the extruder that we can use a zip tie on. So go through there and then around this wire and zip it up. That way it doesn't, fall down onto our bed. And yeah, simple as that, guys. This part is finished. We can also go ahead and install this knob, which goes right here on top of the extruder, and it has a flat spot where it lines up. So it should just drop in. There we go. Very nice. So you guys can see, you can turn that. And also it's like a nice little visual there as the extruder runs. And as far as assembly goes, we are pretty much finished with that. But there are some important things that we need to do, and that's to check our rollers and belts. Make sure everything's running smooth and true. All right, so starting here with the bed, what we want to do is check our rollers, and you guys can probably see we got two rollers here, and those are stationary, and the two on this side are adjustable. And so what I like to do is kind of stick my hand in there and turn the rollers. So what you want is a really slight drag, and actually guys, my bed here is pretty much perfect. And so they include this wrench here that you can turn the adjustable eccentric nut to tighten and loosen the rollers. So I tightened my front one up just a little because it was super loose, and the rear one is perfect. So the point here is you want the bed not to wobble around or have any play, but be as loose as possible on the rollers. That way when it rolls around, it's really smooth. So if you have a really nice smooth back and forth motion, then you should be good. Now another thing that can contribute to that is the belt. So you can see on the top there's a little look through where you can see how the belt is doing. And also we have an adjustable knob here to tighten it and loosening it. So you want your belt to be looser than tighter, but definitely not too loose, because if it's too loose, it'll have flop. And if your belt is not running true, you can try to loosen these bolts on the bottom here and adjust it. But for this, you'd probably have to shimmy it up and whatnot else, because there's no actual adjustment. Now, as far as the back is concerned, we can't even see anything here, not even underneath. So in order to see this at all, you just have to take it apart. And there's a little pass through here, which releases the end stop switch, and even then we can't really see how well the belt is going over that gear. But according to what I can see, it seems fine. The whole point here is that make sure your bed is really smooth. So I'm gonna put this back on, and we're probably going a little bit in too much detail here, but yeah, adjusting is one of the main things you want to do and spend your time on when you get your printer. So if we flip it around to the back, we can see our hot end assembly here, and these have rollers too. So it seems to be pretty smooth. Yeah, our belt is way too tight, but if we check the rollers, they're actually adjusted perfect, because if we spin the tops, if you guys can maybe see that, they got the perfect tension on them. So you just want them to kind of do this little burnout. So if they're too tight, you won't be able to turn this easily. And if it's too loose, it'll wobble. So this actually is perfectly adjusted on mine. And the eccentric nut is under here on this wheel if you do need to loosen it or tighten it. So same concept, some slight drag on the wheels, and it's got to feel smooth. So mine is not smooth at all, and that's because there's something going on with the belt. So it might be too tight. Yes, it's very tight. So we got an adjustment here on the side for the x-axis. Wow, they got that super tight on mine. Let's see. All right, so yeah, that definitely smoothed it out, but I can't see if the belt is running true on the pulley or not because it's all covered up on both sides completely, which is not great in my opinion, because if I wanted to adjust this, I can't, because I can't even see it. And I wish they'd make a little cutout at least so you can see, but they didn't. On both sides, they're completely sealed. And actually guys, on this side, there are a couple bolts that do remove the cover, and maybe we should do that real quick to see. So there's one on top and one on the bottom, and the whole thing just pops off and we can see the belt, and sure enough, it's actually running really true here right in the middle of the sprocket, which is good to see. Now we can't see the other side at all, and I don't really see how you can take that on or off, so we're just gonna go with the way it is, and I think it should be good enough because it does feel pretty smooth overall. And be careful when you do tighten it with these knobs, as you can't really feel how much tightness you have, so you kind of have to pull on the belt when you adjust that. All right, well, let's put this cover back on, and we're good with the x-axis. Now there is one more thing that you could adjust, and that's these wheels here. So on mine, they're a little bit on the tight side. We can go ahead and loosen them up just a bit, and the adjustable eccentric nuts is on the inside here. We'll start with this one. So we loosened it up just a tiny bit. You want to keep these tighter than looser because the Z goes up and down really slow, so there's not too much movement going on, so it's okay if they're a bit tighter. Now what you don't want it to be is too loose where on this side you can bounce around, which we're not bouncing, it's nice and tight. Because we only have one Z-axis lead screw, this side is more vulnerable to movement. And so for this printer, it's better to be tighter than looser. Yeah, we are pretty loose, and you guys can see our Z-axis moves really good. And I can just push it up and down. And this is usually a great indicator that everything's adjusted well and it's all aligned and nothing's binding. Now what I've noticed is that this lead screw here is completely dry. So if you want to put some oil on it or some grease, that'll probably be a good idea, especially if you're having a hard time moving up and down like this. It does have something on it, but it feels like almost nothing. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of grease on it since I have it. And if you don't have any kind of grease at all, you can just use regular oil. And if you don't have that, you can use cooking oil. It's still better than nothing. And if we run this up and down, our oil or grease will spread, and you guys can see it runs really smooth. So much more smoother now that I put some grease on it. So yeah, all these things matter and make your printer a lot more precise. So yeah, as simple as that, guys. We're pretty much done with all the assembly and adjusting, and we can go ahead and put our build plate back on, which just magnetizes. So let's go ahead and clean up the table here, and we can use this drawer from the printer to put our tools in here. And the needle we can pull out of this tape, and be careful, it's very sharp, and it can actually go in this side pocket that goes underneath the channel, so it's only revealed when you pull it out completely. So things that you're absolutely not going to use, you can put in there. So I can even stuff my zip ties in there probably, but all our other tools, we can all put them in the main drawer, including our cutters. They fit nicely in there, and we'll just put it all in here, and it's nice and organized. All right, so let's take a closer look at the Ender-3 version 2 Neo. As you guys can see, it's not too large here sitting on the desk. So the typical Ender-3 size, and there's not too much that stands out that says it's Neo, except for the front of the hot end here. You guys can see there's a new little design element there, and also the CR touch bed leveler. So let's start here on the top. We have the spool holder. So the spool will go on here, and our filament will feed down into the extruder here. The extruder is all metal, which is a huge plus, and it comes with this knob that we installed. And this is definitely a great upgrade, and the knob just falls right in, and you can use this to push the filament through. It's also an indicator of filament flowing. But if you guys notice, there is no filament detector anywhere, so this printer does not come with that. So if we look at the channels, see they're nice, clean. Front side, we got a 20/20 on top, 20/40s on the sides, and also the same clean channel for the x-axis. That's a 20/20. Flipping around to the back, we can see that we only have one lead screw, and everything is here. The extruder, the motor to the extruder. You guys see where we put that zip tie to hold this wire. This is our x-axis motor, and that's where it plugs in. The brass bushings, we grease the lead screw. Going down, we got the coupler with the motor for the z-axis. On the other side here, there's not too much, just the rollers, and then our adjustable knob here for the belt tension. The frame is all metal everywhere, so that's nice to see. Going down to the bottom, we can see our cable that comes out from the bed, and it is strain relief nicely. And all the wires are on this braided protectors. Very nice. Also, we can see all the channels have end caps and our large rubber feet on 4 corners. On the very back here, kind of sticking out, we have the power input port. It is fused with an on and off switch. This is our y-axis motor, and it's all covered up here. The belt, the end stop switch is right on top here, and all these wires here are already pre-connected. And probably the more important thing is back here, which is the power voltage switch from 230 to 115. So depending on where you live, you want to switch yours to the correct voltage. So mine's on 230, but I need to go to 115. So let's grab our little flat screwdriver and switch that over to the 115 voltage. And you guys definitely don't want to forget about this, as it's quite important. If you have it on the wrong voltage, you could damage your printer. So yeah, I like the overall design. Very low profile here on the power supply. Nice end caps. Just looks really good and well built. And going up from here, we can see the back of our hot end, and you guys can kind of see that we have a silicone sock over the heat block, and that's our tip there, and the CR touch over there. Going back to the front on our hot end assembly, we can see the wires that come in. We got a PTF e-tubing going from the extruder to the hot end, and this wiring here, then our main wiring for all the cables. And you guys can see we do have a clip in there on the coupler for the PTF tubing, and we also got a wire here that comes out to our CR touch for the out of bed leveling. So the cover on the hot end is quite interesting looking. We got this red accent. It is all plastic, and we've got a lot of vents for cooling. So this is our parts cooling fan under here. It is vertical blower duct coming out there on the bottom, blowing right under the tip. Our heat break fan is inside there, and it's actually quite large. And then on this side, we have the CR touch. So going to here, you guys can see that this cover here is all covered up, and we took it off earlier. Our end stop plug plugs underneath, and that's the switch here. So it looks pretty nice. And on the other side, we have the adjustment for the belt here, also completely covered. But a very nice clean design. Going down to the bed, I really like this sheet that they included that's flexible and it's magnetic. This makes it a lot more enjoyable to 3D print, as when you're done, you can just pull it off, flex the build plate, and the model will pop off. Plus, you don't have to wait for the build platform to cool off. Right when you're done, you can take it off, set it on the table, it'll cool off really quick compared to like a glass bed. So yeah, very happy to see this. Hopefully it works great and the prints will stick and pop off easily. So going down from there, you guys can see we have the magnetic sheet under that, and then the aluminum part, which is the heated platform, and the elements are underneath, so it is not insulated. But for this size bed, it's not that big of a deal. We got the frame, pretty thick, quality orange springs, adjustable knobs here to level out the build plate. There you guys can see our adjustable eccentric nuts on this side for the rollers on the bed, and then the other side is stationary. The Y belt, and they do have a cutout here so you can see the roller, and this is where we tension it. So over here we have some kind of official Creality Better Filament Plan sticker, QR code, and the parameters of the printer. And right below that we have a couple ports, one for the micro SD card, and the other one is a micro USB plug if you wanted to connect to your computer. Very nice clean design. Going this way, one of my favorite parts of the printer, which is this really large storage box. It completely pulls out and has a little hidden piece here that separates from the main one. It goes underneath the channel. So this is great, and it clips in there, and very useful. Really like that. And as we go from here, we can see our display with the rotary knob. Let's go ahead and peel this protector layer. Underneath here, you guys can see this is how we mounted it. Plugs in here, cable comes from the bottom, and not too much more to see on this side. And on the other side, also not too much to see here. But yeah, overall a really nice looking printer. The only thing I think I wished is that the spool holder would be on the side, but you know, you could upgrade to that, or even do a little mod where you take this off here and print out a little bracket that hooks up to the side, and then the spool will kind of go to the side there. So, but yeah, other than that, very well built printer, and I'm pretty excited to power it on. All right, so I went ahead and plugged the printer in. Let's go ahead and hit the power button. And it does power up. And you guys see it actually boots up real quick. So as far as the UI, it looks pretty similar. I don't really see any difference at this point. We got print, prepare, control, and leveling. And then down here we have all of our constant information here about the different parameters. So let's go ahead and click on prepare. And we'll click on preheat PLA. And so it's going to go 200 on the nozzle and 60 on the bed. It all appears to be working there. And also let's go to out of home and make sure everything works with our motors and end stop switches. So click that. So the X is good. The Y, good. And you guys can see our CR touch there, probing the bed. All right, so everything works, and our bed is getting hot, and our nozzles are already at 170. So yeah, Pretty impressive how quick the bed heats up, even though it doesn't have insulation. So the first thing we want to do is level our bed. And because this printer does have adjustable springs here, we need to go ahead and level the platform out first. And unfortunately, Creality doesn't have a way to make this more simple than it is. So what we need to do is go to prepare and then out of home, which we did. But if you have to, out of home again. And if you guys notice, it kind of raises up, so we're off the build plate quite a bit. So we need to go to move after this, and if we look here, we are 10 millimeters too high, so we have to lower that to 0. And this is the confusing part, because if you don't do this, you're not going to be leveling it correctly. So once you're at 0, now we can start the leveling process. But before we can do that, all our steppers are locked, so we need to disable the stepper motors, which we'll click here. And that's going to let us move it around. Now, the only thing about this is that you're going to have to be very careful not to push down on this. And you guys saw how easy it goes down. So this is a little bit tricky. So try not to put any force down, only side to side there. And then we're moving our bed also. So let's go to this first corner here. All right. And we'll go around. And for now, it looks like I just need to go up mostly on the 4 corners. All right, so back to the front corner here. And now we're going to be adjusting a little more precise. And you want to go around at least 3 times or so and get it pretty close, because as you adjust one, the other ones kind of change. All right, so I am pretty close now. So as long as you get it close, you should be good enough. And then we're going to click on this level button, and that's going to initiate the auto leveling. And our bed leveling is complete. You guys saw the nozzle lowers down to where it needs to be. And now what we can do is set our Z-axis offset. So if we go to prepare, and go Z offset, here we can adjust. And I gotta go down, so I'm going into the negative until our nozzle has some friction between the paper and the bed. There we go. So I'm starting to see some friction here. So I need to go back up. All right. So it looks like about minus 2.70. And you can adjust this when you start printing up or down. But yeah, this offset is going to be universal for this hot end setup. So no matter how you change the build platform, level it up or down, it'll always be minus 2.70. So yeah, because of the CR touch here, it goes off of that. And that pretty much concludes our bed leveling. So let's go ahead and auto home it again. And we're pretty much ready to print. But before we do that, let's go ahead and preheat the printer again. Looks like it turned that off. So preheat PLA. Yeah, the menu is quite simple, guys. We have print here. That's going to read the SD card. Prepare is where all of our useful functions are, like move, disable steppers, out of home, Z-axis offset, preheat PLA, preheat ABS, and cool down. Go back. Control is going to be our temperature control, motion control, configuration, store configuration, read configuration, and reset configuration, and info about the printer. And then our last one here is the auto bed leveling. So yeah, it's pretty simple overall. And down here we have dedicated information. We got the hot end temperature and the target, the bed temperature target, the flow rate, the extruder rate, fan speed, Z-axis, and on the very bottom we have the X, Y, and Z positions. So let's go ahead and put in some filament, cut it at an angle so it's easier to feed. And it's gonna go up here on the spool holder, and then from there down through the extruder inlet there, hopefully you guys can see, and we're gonna just press on this knob to release it, and then kind of go into the teeth, and then once we go there we can use this knob to push it through. But yeah, we're literally pushing the filament through the PTFE tubing and then out the hot end. And we'll go ahead and purge that. So we got red coming out, perfect. So let's grab our micro SD card. And by the way, it is at 8 gig and it plugs in right here upside down. So now we can go and click on print, and we can see that we have a couple test prints included with the printer. So let's go ahead and start with this 2Z one. Go ahead and move this boogers out of the way. Start. And sure enough, we can see a preview here of what our print looks like. And I think this is the new part of the UI that it's able to show you what you're printing. Well, that's pretty cool. So let's confirm. And it starts. So unfortunately, it doesn't show you the actual preview while you're printing, just initially when you first start. Got some filament there. But yeah, let's hope our offset is good. And we can go to tune and Z-axis offset just in case we need to adjust it up or down. But it appears that we don't need to do anything because it's perfectly between the nozzle and the bed. All right, well, that's pretty impressive, but I think it does need to go up just a little bit. It seems like a little too close, so I'm gonna go up. Okay, yeah, that feels a little better, but yeah, we're pretty much perfect off the build plate. And as we do print, we do have a different menu here. So on the top, it shows us the file we're printing, the progress bar, it's at 0 right now. How much time passed since we started, 1 minute. Remaining and still calculating. And then we got hot buttons, tune, pause, and stop. So in tune, we can adjust our printing speed, our nozzle temperature, our bed temperature, the fan speed, and the Z-axis offset. And obviously you can pause and stop the printer if you want to. And down here we got all our general information that always stays down here. So yeah, very nicely laid out and easy to understand. So the printer is ultra quiet. I'm going to bring my microphone in. No motor sounds at all, and the fans are actually on the quieter side. So yeah, so far everything is looking really good. And it looks like our 2Z is sticking to the build plate, no problem. And we're 4 minutes in, going up and up on the layers. Alright, so we went ahead and printed out both of the models that were included with the printer, and I went ahead and changed the filament to blue after the rabbit there. So the other print, as you guys can see, was a little benchy. Now if you look at the screen here, it's pretty darkened and it has an auto dim feature, so if we just touch the knob here, it'll come back to life. And so for the benchy, it only took 1 hour and 46 minutes, and we can just click on confirm and it'll go back to the main menu. So let's take a look at the 2Z here first. So the thing that really impressed me is how well the layers went down. You guys can see that, and for some reason Creality always has a good layer adhesion. Of course, you know, that said, with the printer being adjusted correctly and nothing's binding, usually the Creality printers do a great job, and this V2 Neo is beautiful looking here on this 2Z. So this is our seam here. Yeah, very nicely laid down, and you guys can see how smooth everything is. Very impressive. And we did have a little bit of stringing here on the top, not too severe, but yeah, I don't know how these were sliced. Being test prints, this one turned out really good. And by the way, this is what the bottom looks like. It appears that we didn't purge it enough. We got some kind of darker color there, I guess from factory testing. But yeah, looking good, and the bed stuck really well. And speaking about that, the benchy is still stuck on there, and the bed is completely cold. So let's see. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but I like how they have 2 tabs on each side. You can choose any corner to pry it up with. So let's see what happens. Okay, so it's still stuck on there, which is cool because that just tells us that the texture here grabs the filament very well. So all we gotta do is flex it, and the benchy does want to come off. So yeah, very easy. So yeah, so far this thing is performing excellent. And also on the sheet, I noticed when you put it down, you can actually still move it around by just pushing on the corners. It does magnetize, but not enough where you can't move it. Now the benchy is a different story here, guys. So this doesn't appear to be sliced very well, or we had other issues, I'm not too sure. It looks like maybe just bad slicing and possibly not good filament either, maybe. But in any case, yeah, you can see that there's a little bit of under extrusion here and there. The layers are even, and actually we do have some miscoloring, so this could be because of the filament. I'm not too sure, honestly, what to think about this thing. Yeah, and lots of stringing for some reason. So yeah, not a really good benchy, but we didn't slice this print, so it's kind of hard to judge it since we don't know what the parameters of the slice is. So I think what would be better is if we sliced our own benchy, and maybe also a calibration cube. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we got the SD card plugged in into the computer. Let's go ahead and open it up. So we have the 2 G codes that were included, and also this RAR file, which is made for Windows, and I'm on Mac. I don't think that's gonna work. Yeah, it's not even gonna work. So I can't even unpack it here on my computer. So I wish they didn't do that. So I guess we can't really see what's in there, but most likely there's a manual, a slicer, and things like that. So not a problem. So let's go ahead and open our Cura slicer, and this is what I normally use, and we'll go ahead and build a profile from scratch. So we're gonna click Add Printer, Non-Network Printers, find Creality, go to Ender-3, and we can rename it here. So we'll call it V2 Neo. Delete the Creality word so it's not so long. So we'll click Add, and these are all our parameters, which should be fine. So over here where it says G28, we can add G29 to home all axes since we have the CR Touch, and everything looks good here. So let's click Next, and right away here we can see the whole build volume. Let's go ahead and throw in a benchy. If we click on it, we can see a little menu pops up here on the side, and there's some arrows here. You can drag it, and this is on the move. I'm just gonna push it back a little bit. So we got move, scale, and you can do it here by entering millimeters, percentage, or you can just drag these things here. And then we also have rotate. So the more important parameters are here on top, and this is our print settings. So first thing you want to do is click on these little dots right here and choose advanced. And I'm gonna go through this real quick of how I change mine. So this is our layer height, and you can change this up or down. So everything should be good there. Let's go down to shell. I'm gonna change the wall count from 2 to 3. That makes the walls a lot nicer. And we'll also do the top layers from 4 to 5. And that helps kind of fill in the gaps on the top. So here we have fill gaps between walls. Usually that's turned on, so you can turn that off to print faster, and you'll be able to see where the gaps are. Infill density at 20 is good. Temperature 200 is good, but the build plate we want to turn to 60. For print speed, normally I use 50 for all my testing. The only thing I change is the initial layer to 15 and the brim and skirt to 20. We're going to enable retractions and change that to 6 millimeters and the retraction speed to 25. And the rest should be good here. So over here we have generate support. So if you have a model that you want to put supports on, you can do all the parameters here. Build plate adhesion, I like skirt because that prints straight to the build plate. Brim just touches the model and kind of extends in one layer to help it stick. And then raft, it completely builds a raft underneath the model and prints the model on top. So this is, if you're having a lot of trouble sticking, this could help. But this wastes a lot of time and material. Skirt is my preferred setting here, and it's just going to print 3 lines around the print and then print the print itself. We also have spiralized outer contour here. We will try this out for this printer and see how it does, but the way this works, it just prints a few layers on the bottom and then one layer all the way around. So this is good for like vases or larger items that are more simple that can print with one layer. So we'll uncheck that, and simple as that, guys. That's pretty much it. Now there is actually one more thing that I forgot. If we click on these dots and go to export, in the travel section where your retractions are, it says retract before outer wall. I like to uncheck this as it does make the walls a lot nicer, especially where there's a lot of retractions needed. So you can try this out also and see if it helps your prints. I'm going to set this back to advanced so we're not confused, and we should be good to go. So all we're going to do is click the slice down here. So it's telling us it's going to take 2 hours and 5 minutes to print this print. And since we got our SD card plugged in, we can go ahead and just save it straight to the removable. And it saves here, and you can eject it and print it out. But I'm going to go ahead, double click or right click and clear the build plate and throw in a calibration cube, push it back a little bit and slice it the same way. And this is going to take 37 minutes, and we'll go ahead and save this to the SD card, and now we can just eject it. But before we do, you guys can see we got the 2 new files that we just threw in here. Pretty cool and simple, and hopefully guys, this little quick overview here helps you out. Alright, so the benchy and the calibration cube printed out, and I have to say guys, they look really good. Now I also printed something else here, and we'll talk about that after these 2. So let's go ahead and look at the calibration cube. So here we have the X, and you guys can see that is a really clean. Trying to get you guys some different lightings. But yeah, if you see those lines, that's just the lighting, but the print itself is super smooth. Practically no ghosting or any artifacts. Very nice. Here we have the Y. A little bit of vibrations and very minor ghosting. Nothing weird or bad, so looks excellent. The X wall and the Y wall. The top also looks perfect, and the bottom. And this is the texture that the build plate leaves. So yeah, very impressive and just an excellent layer adhesion and precision. Now the benchy is what really impressed me, and hopefully you guys can see. I guess we'll start here from the bottom. Nice textured finish, and if we look at the wall, very smooth. And I'm trying to give you guys the lighting so you can see. There's a certain lighting, it kind of looks like it's layered, but it's not. It's extremely smooth. You can kind of, I guess, tell here. So Very minimal ringing, ghosting, or any of that stuff. So yeah, impressive. The sides there look great. The overhangs also look great. Nothing really sagging over the arches on both sides. The box there with the slit, the top, chimney looks super round. And yeah, just a perfect print, guys. So yeah, this is pretty much as good as it gets when you get to this type of print quality. And again, to be honest, you know, I'm kind of expecting that from Creality, as if you assembled the printer pretty well and everything's adjusted, you should get these kind of prints quite easily. Now for the other print here, this is actually printed in PET G, also in black, and this is actually a bracket for the spool holder. So I got a little frustrated with the way the spool holder is on this printer, because the printer as a whole has everything updated and nice, except for the spool holders in the wrong spot. And the reason I say that is because if you guys notice how much of a turn it has to make, turn this thing super steeply 90 degrees right at the end, and it's really rubbing on the extruder. And if we zoom in here, you guys can probably see we got a lot of shavings all around there, and even though it's metal, it must still have some kind of sharp edges in there that it's just shaving the filament as it feeds in because of this crazy 90-degree angle. And so to fix that, we printed this bracket here, which is a side spool mount, and it is still stuck to the bed, and it is printed in PETG at 230 degrees. So let's go ahead and pry it off, and look at that, it comes off super simple. Again, I really love this build plate. And so there's a lot of options and different kinds that are similar. This is just what I had from before, and it works pretty well. But if you go to Thingiverse, you can find quite a few different options. What I like about this one is that we can just slide it in without any more hardware required. And then our existing spool holder will mount here using the same hardware. So let's go ahead and remove it. And we're going to take off this little T-nuts because we'll be reusing them in this bracket. So they should fit right in there. And now we're gonna connect our original bracket to that. So this could get a little finicky, but it's not too bad. So I got one started, and we'll do the other one. Now we're just gonna snug them up just like that. So yeah, and if we look at the back of the printer, we can see there's a little end cap here that we need to pop off. So this might not pop off too easy, but it does come off eventually. And then we're gonna take our new spool holder upgrade, and we're just gonna slide it into these grooves here. And just like that. And you guys can see it can move around on the channel, and seems to be working pretty well. So let's put the cap back on, and now we have our new spool holder on the side, and our spool fits perfectly right there. Now one thing you probably want to do is get these wires behind the spool holder, which we can probably squeeze over here. And the reason we want them behind it, so the spool holder itself kind of holds them away from the spool. And yeah. And so now we modified our printer to have the spool holder on the side, which will feed straight into the extruder and not rub so hard against the arm where it snags and eats up the filament. So this is quite a simple upgrade that you can print out, and I'll try to leave some links for the side spool bracket. But keep in mind, the one like this that free flows or hangs, or there's a lot of tension on it, you probably want to print in PET-G or ABS. But they do have the kind where the stress is relieved as it touches the bottom, and those you could probably print in PLA. So I guess we'll move our plant to this side. Put our tools back, and we're ready to go back to printing. So I'm going to go ahead and print a few more things out, and then we'll take a closer look at those prints and also my final thoughts. All right, and so these are all the prints that we printed with the Ender-3 version 2 Neo. And I do have to say, guys, this printer is pretty much polished up overall and a pretty compelling package right out of the box. And really the only thing is the spool holder relocation, which is quite an easy mod that you can print yourself. And this becomes a perfect printer to get started with. All right, so let's take a closer look at these prints. So we've seen the rabbit, we've seen the blue benchy, we've seen the calibration cube and our own sliced benchy, which turned out excellent. Let's go ahead and look at this little frog, and you guys can see Ender-3, it also turned out really good. It is in this light color, which is a little harder to see, but hopefully you guys can see. So our Z-seam's on top, but if we look at the sides and the reflections, the layers went down really nice. So yeah, this printer puts the layers down beautifully. Now it is quite important that everything is adjusted well for it to do this good. Now, if we look at the little paws here, everything is very accurate and looks beautiful. Not much stringing there at all. And yeah, great little print here. Another print I like to print, which really tests out the accuracy of the printer and how the layers go down, is this gear here. So this is a functional print, and I was pretty impressed that it turned out perfect, and it just spins right out of the printer. I did have to break it just a little bit, but after that it's smooth. And this is probably one of the more accurate ones I've seen in a while. There is some play in it, but it's so minor, and it's perfect, literally. So yeah, excellent job here with a functional print like this that requires great tolerances, and also all these pieces are printed individually, and the bed has been working great. Prints stick and then pop off when it cools off. So here we have a millipede, and this is a pretty cool print because it consists of all these pieces that have to combine. Yeah, there's a lot of printing and retracting, and nothing can break loose. And as you guys can see, there was no issues whatsoever, and this print looks excellent. And this is a really fun one, especially for the kids. It's kind of like a little, it wiggles around and goes into any shape. So yeah, if you want to print things like this, the version 2 Neo here does an excellent job with sticking to the bed and then just popping right off. Now I did forget to say that everything was printed in 0.2 layer height, 200 on a nozzle and 60 on the bed at 50 millimeters a second. So yeah, great print. Very happy with that one. So the next one is this chainmail, and this is really impressive because this is my first time printing something like this, and this requires a lot of retractions, guys. I mean, you can imagine how much it has to, you know, move a little, then retract, print, and then move a little more, retract, and it's constantly retracting. I mean, so there's a lot of things that can go wrong here, like it could pop off, you know, the nozzle could knock one of the pieces off, things like that. So this is a really good test here of how everything works together, and you can get something like this with 3D printing, which almost feels like a rag, but you know, it's a chainmail, and yeah, it kind of flexes in many ways, a square pretty much. So yeah, and if we look at it closer here, guys, you can see the quality of the print. Very nice. And yeah, very impressive. So if you want to print stuff like this, you could easily do it with this printer also. And the last print we have here is a rocket plane, is what it's called, and it is in spiralized mode. So we got a few layers on the bottom and then one layer all around to the top, and this is the full 250 millimeters tall, and it is still stuck to the bed. Let's see, yeah, we're gonna have to flex it off because it's stuck pretty well, and prints like these are pretty fragile, so let's see how well we can just pry it off. So I'm just gonna flex it, and sure enough, it breaks loose pretty easily, and it should just peel off. So yeah, guys, again, I love this build plate. It works perfectly, and all the prints seem to stick very nicely, and it's quite easy to pull them off by just flexing the build plate. All right, so yeah, this thing turned out excellent. So the bottom looks great. Look at those walls, guys. I mean, that's pretty much perfection right there. So very minimal ringing, any artifacts, just a beautiful print. We do have a little bit of a blobbing here and there, but it's pretty minor. There's a couple here. Not too sure what that was, but yeah, other than that, you guys can judge this thing is just excellent. But it's not all perfect. As we got to the top, you guys can see we had some kind of issue here. There's some layering here and there, so this must have something to do with either some binding or something towards the top, or maybe our PTF tubing here was catching on one of these zip ties, and I think that's what was going on, because one of these were more towards the middle and I moved it kind of back and it was sticking up like this, and I didn't notice it till later, and when it got to the top it was catching on it. So I think that's probably what these layer lines were. But yeah, even going to the tip there, you guys can see cooling is great, nothing melted, and it did a perfect job, which honestly, I wish I could say that I'm impressed, and I normally would be, but this is a Creality printer, and I've printed many things with Creality machines, and most of the time I had great or excellent results. So yeah, as you guys can see, I'm a pretty big fan of this thing, and I feel like because the Ender-3 from its original form was such a good building block, it still lives on many years later in all these little iterations and upgrades. And so one of the things that the Neo really addresses is the out of bed leveling with the CR Touch. If you're the kind of person that, you know, can't get your bed perfectly, this really makes it easy, as all you got to do is click leveling and it'll reprobe it. Now I still wish that they implemented a better software for manual leveling, as that part is still confusing, especially especially for someone that's new to 3D printers. But other than that, this is a very familiar UI. Great screen. We do have a preview of what you're printing before you start it. Nice clean channels on the front. Adjustable belts on X and Y. All metal extruder with this really cool knob. That's quite useful. CR Touch, all new heat break, and this cover also looks nice with this red accent. Great build volume at 220 by 220 by 250. Excellent little steel sheet build plate. Love the drawer down here to put your tools and extra parts. You do have power loss resume, so if the power goes out, it can continue printing where it left off. Only thing we're really missing on this printer is the filament detector, which is not too big of a deal as long as you have pretty good filament. And also overall, this printer is quiet with the silent steppers. And all you gotta do is move that spool holder down with the bracket, and you pretty much got a perfect setup here. So if you guys are interested in this printer, I'm gonna have some links in the description. Check it out. And if you did enjoy this video, then hit that like button. Also check out my other videos, especially the 3D printing playlist. I'm sure you'll find something interesting there. And also check out my other channel, Just Print, where I am planning to eventually move everything there regarding 3D printing. So as always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.